says here we should work in teams. I tend to think of myself as a one-man wolf pack.
You are about to enter Information Overload, a worldwide transmission with Herp Herp Hooray's featured Breeder of the Week. Here's your host, Jason Rossi.
Welcome back to Herp Herp Hooray, a weekly worldwide transmission. I'm your host, Jason Rossi. We are simulcasting on RossiReptiles.com, the Sprout, and don't forget to subscribe and download us on iTunes. This week's featured breeder of the week is someone I found on YouTube shortly after I had started breeding ball pythons. His videos are very informative and definitely helpful. He is just an all-around nice guy. Brian Gundy from GoodnessSnakes.com is Herp Herp Hooray's special guest this week. Brian, welcome to the show.
All right, Jason, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and talking with us and having the masses hear you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, first off, that last video was very well put together. Stephanie did a great job on that.
She did a fantastic job. I couldn't have been happier with the way it turned out, and I'm just so impressed and so, proud of her for what she's done. She just did a great job.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. I enjoyed it. So great job, Stephanie. So let's give our listeners a little background and history on the Gold Blush Mojave.
Okay. I had a feeling that might come up.
Why not?
Yeah.
That's what you're known for.
What was that, Jason?
I said that's what you're known for, so, well, one of the things you're known for, so.
Okay. Yeah, the way that whole project started, I'll take you guys back to the ultimate beginning. For about 10 or 12 years, I actually bred and sold colubrids. And through my colubrid days, I met a gentleman by the name of Dwayne Richard. And there was a time when I was going to sell out, well, I actually did, and sold out my colubrid collection. And I had every intention of, taking that money, and was probably producing about 200 or 300 colubrids per year. And I was going to take that money and sell the collection and go out and maybe do some traveling. I wanted to go to places like Tahiti and Australia and places. And as I was in the process of selling out my colubrid collection, I saw my first photograph of a pied, and immediately had this, thought, well, gosh, I've never seen a snake that looks so beautiful. So I thought I would go ahead and take that money that I had gained from selling my colubrid collection and reinvested it into ball pythons and boas. So during my colubrid days, I met Dwayne Richard, who at that time was Dan and Colette Sutherland's partner, the snake keeper. And so I called up Dwayne, and I basically gave him my shopping list of all the animals that I wanted to purchase, and I had no intentions of purchasing from, I just wanted to purchase from Dan and Colette, and because they had such a huge collection and such a good name in the industry, I thought, let's just go ahead and do some one-stop shopping. So I gave Dwayne my shopping list, and during the process of picking out the animals that I was going to purchase from them, Dwayne told me that they would go ahead, they agreed that they would take their year's worth, or the collection of Mojaves that they had produced for that year, and they would go through the animals and pick out the three best Mojaves of that season. And then I met them at the Anaheim show. This was probably about 9 years ago. And so I was lucky enough to really take my pick of what the breeders decided were their top 3 Mojaves of that season. I went to the Anaheim show, picked what I thought was the best of the 3 males that they had picked, and it was just a gorgeous animal. By far, probably one of the most beautiful Mojaves I'd ever seen up until that point. And so, and what I was really excited about too was that Colette had done such a great job in not only producing morphs, but she was doing a phenomenal job at the time of producing normals that were just out of this world. I mean, I remember prices that Colette had on some of her normals at the time, where she was selling normals for $400 and $500. They were just, and they were selling at those prices. So anyway, I took the male, what I call the patriarch male Mojave that I purchased from Dan and Colette, took him home, and at the time I had about 48 normal females that I was basically picking and choosing from, and bred that male to several of the females. At that time, the following year, I think I produced only one Mojave, which I kept back. And then through the course of years, basically continued working with the project. I remember calling up one of the top breeders in the country, Ralph Davis, and asking him if he thought that there would be sort of a niche for grading Mojaves. And at that time, he told me that he thought that the Mojave project was, sort of becoming a base project, and whether or not people would actually be able to sort of grade them and then price them accordingly. He didn't see that the market was going to work out for Mojaves in that direction. And at the time, I pretty much agreed with him. So anyway, I just kept selectively breeding my Mojaves, and through the course of time was producing animals that showed a little bit more blushing than most of other Mojaves that were being produced at the time. And some of my customers would call up and say, Brian, we'd like to look at some pictures of your blushing Mojaves or your high blush Mojaves. Excuse me. And so, then progressively, I'd have customers calling me up and they'd say, well, can we look at pictures of your gold blush Mojaves or the gold blushing Mojaves? So the term gold blush sort of, metamorphosized really by my customers calling them what they basically thought they looked like. They, to them, they looked like a Mojave that had a lot of blushing, and in some cases, the higher quality animals showed that there was actually some gold or yellow coming up from the flames and moving into the blushing. So that's basically how that project started. Through the years, I selectively bred and produced quite a few. But, it's interesting that I know that For Goodness Snakes is known for the Mojave project and the selective breeding that I've done with that project. But what's interesting is that not only that my Mojaves are related, most of my Mojaves, most of my pieds are related, most of my pastels are related, most of my bumblebees are related. Most of just about every project that I'm working with, I have focused on, rather than trying to produce what breeders are trying to produce, the first one of that kind, first complomorph or whatever, I really haven't focused on trying to be the first on the block to produce a certain morph or combomorph. I've really been focused more on trying to take the base morphs and really, through selective breeding, trying to improve, sort of redefine what those morphs can look like. And that's basically what my focus has been through the years with my ball python and boa project.
Fine-tuning them through line breeding?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Years ago, I used to race pigeons, competitively raced pigeons. And we had a saying at the time, breed from the best and get rid of the rest. And that's basically what I've what I'm doing with the breeding projects with the ball pythons and boas. My focus is really based on the fact that I am my first customer. And I know a lot of people have said this, but the selling of the snakes is really not my motivation in this hobby or profession or whatever. It's really trying to produce the nicest looking animals that I can keep for myself. So that's really what it comes down to when I'm working with the different breeding projects. My goal is to really produce holdbacks. And anything that doesn't meet my requirement as a holdback then gets sold. And that's basically how I run my business.
That's basically where we're at. So the gold blush jewel, I know it's a little darker. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, the gold blush jewel is, the father is one of my patriarch gold blush Mojaves, and the jewel comes from a normal female that I have called the jewel, simply because she just is outstanding, an outstanding normal. She's just very bright, very interesting color and pattern. And the babies that I've produced from her through the years just pop with color. And so I've incorporated that as just another group of Mojaves that I'm working with. And they're all, I think everybody needs to understand that my Mojaves are just as everyone else's Mojaves are. They're all related to the original groups that came in through Dan and Colette. So I'm not really working with any other type of Mojave other than the original strain that Dan and Colette brought into the country.
You're just tweaking it a little bit.
Yeah, that's really where the fun is for me. I'm just taking, what I'm really, in a lot of ways, I'm taking the baton from Colette when she was doing a lot of selective breeding, where the normals really were important to her, and not only from the normal standpoint, but actually trying to produce high-quality morphs. She was introducing really high-quality normals into those projects, which, in my opinion, took the quality of their animals to a much higher level than, let's say, most other breeders that were just trying to produce the animals rather than to focus on the quality of the animal.
And I have to say that Paradox Super Gold Blush Mojave is super cool looking.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we just get lucky. There's nothing I can do as a breeder to anticipate that or to make it happen. Although it's interesting, the father of that Paradox actually produced another Paradox 3 years ago. So this is actually the second Mojave Paradox that I produced out of the same male.
That'd be something nice to prove out.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not real optimistic about it. I'm hopeful, I guess. But based on what I understand from a genetic standpoint, it's not likely that I'll be able to take that and start throwing out more Paradox animals. But, we'll see. Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Thinking her around might pay off.
Yep, exactly.
So have you hit the clown pied yet?
No, unfortunately, I haven't. This year looks the best of all. I have, through the years, I bred my male pied to my male clown for 2 seasons in a row. I held back 2.5 of those babies, so I have 2 males and 5 females. The males are probably at around the 800-gram range, and the females, I have 2 females that are about the 1,500-gram range, one at about the 1,100-gram, and then there's 2 other females that are just real finicky, and they're lucky if they're into the 700 or 800-gram range. So hopefully this season, the 2013 season, I may get lucky. I would feel fortunate to produce a clown. Would be great, but the goal is obviously to produce that pied clown.
Anything visual will be a step closer, but that double would be something nice to have.
It sure would. I'd be honored to have something like that in my collection. And again, the first one I ever saw was one that Dan and Colette had produced, and I saw it at the Anaheim show, several years ago. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago now. And as soon as I saw that pied clown that they had produced, I knew exactly what I was going to do with my pied and the female clown that I had at the time, was to produce the double hets and wait it out and see if I could get lucky.
So what other ball python projects you got going on this year?
This year I've produced some real nice gold blush pastaves that I'm real proud of. The colors just pop in these guys. I'm working with a different bumblebee project now. I've produced a male bumblebee that not only has the spider or the bee pattern on the dorsal area, but it also has dots, a lot of dots. This particular male that I produced has 41 dots on it. So, I'm having this thought that maybe if I can somehow, work that project to where I can actually redefine what a bumblebee looks like. So if I can create a yellow snake with dots on it, rather than, and it actually be a bumblebee rather than, some other type of combo morph, then, like I said, it really fits in with my focus as a breeder to, redefine what these morphs look like and to really try to enhance the color. This particular bumblebee has a huge amount of white coming in from the sidewalls, which is something I really like in bumblebees. And again, this particular bumblebee that I produced this year is related to all the other bumblebees that I have. So again, it's one of those things where I'm just trying to tweak in the line, and by doing a little bit of inbreeding, I don't do a lot, but I do some inbreeding, I'm able to sort of, just tweak in that gene pool so that things are less variable and more, consistent.
So how do you go about getting your hatchling ball pythons to get started on?
Normally, I would like everything to eat rats. There's no question that I have no intentions of feeding any of my snakes mice, but that isn't always the way it works out. So what I typically do is I try to, first 2 or 3 feedings, I start feeding pinky or fuzzy rats right after the first shed. And if they don't eat, let's say within the first 3 or 4 weeks of that first shed, then I'll switch them over to mice just to get them to eat. And I used to think, well, if a snake isn't eating, well then forget it. I'm not going to work with it. I'm not going to deal with it. Well, I quickly changed my mind when I had some real nice animals that weren't eating, and I thought, well, they got to eat something. You can't just let them die. And so I progressively started working toward feeding mice. Again, it's not my initial goal, but it comes down to sometimes whatever you can get the snake to eat is a good thing. And so I try to feed most of my animals eat rats. I would say probably 99% of my breeders are all on rats. And just a suggestion to those breeders that are starting out or the people that are beginners in this hobby, if you can get your snakes to eating rats, especially your females, you're going to be much better off because you're going to get the weight gain that you need on the rats versus probably struggling to get the weight gain that you need if you're feeding mice.
Yeah, we're the same. It's kind of hard, though, waiting that month. They're not eating. You got to go try to find some mice.
Yeah, I don't have any problem finding the mice. We have surplus breeders out here, rodent breeders that I can get mice from. But again, I would just prefer my animals eating rats because I can get a much better, like I said, a much faster weight gain. I believe that baby snakes, just like any other baby animal, they're genetically engineered to grow. So during that first year or so, I like to really accommodate them with as much food intake as they need so that they can get through that first growth spurt. And again, mice will do it to a certain point, but it's pretty difficult to get a female to 1,500 grams feeding mice. And in some cases, you might even add a year or two to the breeding project if that female is on mice.
So do you vend any expos?
Yeah, I did. I was a vendor at the San Jose, the Herp World Expo in San Jose, and today I'm going to be getting a table at the Sacramento show. I'll be putting my information on their website to be a vendor at the Sacramento show coming up. I think it's in September or October.
Nice.
And those are the only 2 shows for the year.
Okay. So we're going to switch it up to your boa project there. I see you got some motleys.
Yeah, I have several motleys. I have a Sunglow motley. I also have a hypo motley. We've worked with the motley projects that I've obtained from either Chris Nicholas or Jeremy Stone. One of those. I actually produced or purchased animals originally from both of those breeders and infiltrated their lines or their blood into the animals and projects that I'm working with now.
Now, have they done a super with the motley? I thought it was all black. Did that?
Yeah, I have not. Based on what I understand, it's not a very strong gene. So when super motleys have been produced, I don't know that there have ever been ones that have grown to the point where they have actually reproduced themselves. The animal seems to be very weak, doesn't seem to survive. It's almost a degenerative muscle problem. And again, I have not produced any supers. I don't have any intentions of producing supers. And also from the boa standpoint, the projects I'm working with, I'm pretty strong with the Matt Crabe Redline albino project also.
So what do you have planned for your Sunglow project?
I'm going to try to breed the Sunglow motley this year to a Redline Sunglow. So it's going to be interesting to see how the albino gene works out, and so we'll be taking a super, basically producing super Sunglows and hopefully some super Sunglow motleys.
Are you going for any moon glows, or are you going to stick with the Sunglow?
Well, I don't really. I'm actually not working real hard on the boa projects right now. I'm actually more focused on the ball python project. So I really don't have any intentions of trying to push the bulk projects that I have working right now into anything other than what it is, and then trying to improve on what I have and trying to produce animals that are a higher quality than their parents.
Nice. So we're just going to switch it up completely to the albino berm. I see you have one of those.
All right.
I forgot his or her name.
Yeah, his name is Bingo. I don't typically name my animals, but I also not only am a breeder, but I also do educational programs for children in schools. I do a lot of birthday parties. I have 2 birthday parties this afternoon, and so with the animals that I bring to the reptile programs that I do, I name all of those animals. I have I bring 2 lizards, a blue-tongued skink, also a black and white tegu. They and then I have the albino berm, and like I said, his name is Bingo.
And you also have the black and white tegu. What's his name?
His name is Buzz.
Buzz. That guy's cool.
Yeah. And doing the educational programs, it's a great opportunity for me to help people that don't know much about reptiles to really find out that reptiles are probably the most misunderstood animals on the planet. I explain to my audiences pretty much on a day-to-day basis that these animals are very gentle. I think of them more as puppies than I do that most people would think of them as snakes. And the way I've designed my program is to really eliminate or minimize the fear factor. And it's very common for me to start my program with a question to the audience of how many people in the audience are afraid of snakes. And I'll see, quite a few hands come up, especially from the adult side of the audience. And then by the end of the program, those people that originally raised their hands, they're some of the first people that want to hold the 9-foot Burmese python around their shoulders. So it's amazing to see the transformation that happens from those that went to the program thinking that snakes are the aggressive, slimy animals to, wow, these are pretty cool, So it's always fun from my standpoint to see that transformation happen.
That was about, my next question was about Forgiveness Snakes Adventure. So why don't you give us a little more rundown of what we might expect if, we had you come over and do a party or a presentation?
Sure, yeah. So I'll give you some history about the FGSA side of my business. About the time I sold my colubrid collection, my children were going to elementary school, and I was doing, maybe 1 or 2 programs in their science class on a year-to-year basis, where I would just take a day off work and I would just, basically do an educational program for the kids at the school, class after class after class. And then one day a woman called me up and asked if I would be willing to bring my animals to her son's birthday party and, basically do a show and tell like I had done at the school a few days before then. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And then her first question is, well, how much do you charge? And I thought to myself, well, hang on a second. Somebody's willing to pay me to bring some snakes to their house and sort of do a show and tell? And so I thought, well, okay, how about $100? And so progressively from there, it started growing into sort of just a way of making a few bucks on the weekends. I'd probably do 1 or 2 birthday parties a month. For probably 3 to 5 years, I did that. And then I was laid off my job. I worked 30 years at the same company. I was in upper management and high tech in the Silicon Valley here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And one day called into my boss's office and basically asked to leave the facility, the company there. And I felt sorry for myself for a couple of days. And then I thought, what the heck, I was 58 years old at the time, and I thought, I'm not a very good candidate to go out and get another job. So I thought, well, this would be a good time for me to see if I can build on what I had already been doing. So I really started focusing on the marketing side of the Forgiveness Snakes Adventure side of my business. And progressively through the course of time, that has now become my major means of paying my bills. And it's what I do for a living. I don't even know people ask me what I do for a living. I don't know that there's an actual name for it. I'm a reptile educator, I guess you could say.
You're loving life.
Yeah, that is for sure. I am living my dream. I can't think of a happier way to live every day than for me to be able to go to a school or go to a party. And we not only do programs for children, we do programs for adults. It's not too long ago we did a big off-site team building event for Google. And we've worked for companies like Hewlett-Packard and USGS. And not only are we doing birthday parties for children, we're doing birthday parties for adults. We've done parties for 25, 50, 60, and 65-year-olds. So basically what I do is I show up at wherever I'm doing the program. I bring 2 lizards. One's a blue-tongued skink. The other one's a black and white tegu. I also bring 4 ball pythons of various morphs, different colored mutations. And then, again, the 9-foot albino Burmese python. And what I do is I focus the first 10 or 15 minutes on education. And my experience, being that I've lived in the San Francisco Bay Area all of my life and being a snake breeder for the last 25 years or so, I bring quite a bit of experience to the programs, not just with the hobby side of the business, but from the indigenous species side of the business, from the indigenous species side of what I've worked with, because I go herping all the time in the Bay Area. So the first 15 or so minutes is focused on education. Then I do what I call the audience participation segment of the program, and that's where I'm really focusing. If I'm doing a birthday party, I focus on the birthday child. They become my personal assistant during the program. And then at the, again, we do some audience participation. We have some fun. We have a blue-tongued skink kissing the cheeks of the children. And then we take it up a notch and we ask one of the adults to volunteer to come up and get kissed by a lizard. Well, they inadvertently think that they're going to be kissed by a blue-tongued skink. So when I have the adult come up out of the audience, I ask the adult to blindfold themselves. And then I bring out the black and white tegu that's basically been hidden all this time. And the adult thinks they're going to be kissed by the blue-tongued skink, but they're actually being kissed on the cheek by this, 20-pound black and white tegu, and the audience goes crazy, and they just love it. And then our last surprise, I guess you could say, is where we bring up 4 people from the audience, 4 adults. We blindfold them. We have them stretch their arms out in front of them, and we lay the Burmese python on their outstretched arms. And then at the end of the program, I let all of the animals go that I've brought to the program, and everyone that wants to gets to touch and hold all of the animals that I bring. So when you guys are watching the videos on YouTube, what you're seeing in most cases is the last 15 or 20 minutes where we're offering the hands-on portion of the program.
Sounds like an adventure for sure. What's your YouTube channel for our listeners?
Yeah, it's FGS9. FGS.
Yeah, and they are definitely informative. I'd suggest everyone take a look at them. So what do you think we need to do against all the laws on the ban on exotic animals as of late? I mean, you own a Burmese python, so I'm pretty sure you're aware of what's going on.
Of course.
What do we need to do?
As far as I'm concerned, we need to feed as much money into USARC and any agency that works with USARC to give them as much power as they need. And I think what it really comes down to, and it's sad that our country works this way, and our politics works this way, but I think we need to feed as much money into our cause as possible, because that's what is going to buy us, some insurance, whether we're spending that money on education. Ideally, I think it would be great if we could get someone to create a commercial that would just start changing the minds of people about their initial thoughts and prejudices against snakes in general. Like I said, I mean, it's very common for me to be taking my snakes and when I'm doing my programs, and it's very common for me to repeat at least 2 or 3 times during the program that, in my opinion, snakes in general are probably one of the most misunderstood animals on the planet. And we've been very fortunate. We have the 2 lizards and 5 snakes that we bring to the programs. We've been doing this for about 2 years. We've not had any issues with any of them. There's never been any aggression that we've seen. Another thing that's interesting to note is I went to a seminar not too long ago with the Central Valley Herpetological Society out in Manteca, California, and they had a guy that came in and did a PowerPoint presentation about the venom extraction facilities located in the United States. And so what was interesting to me is that when they were interviewing 3 of these extraction facilities, or the people, the leaders of these facilities, they were asking one question, and that question was, of all the venomous reptiles that you have, which ones are the most aggressive? And the answer from all 3 facilities, and these were not, answers that were, practiced or gone over, but the answer was the same. Their answer to that question was that they didn't own any aggressive snakes. And we weren't talking about king snakes, milk snakes, and corn snakes. They were talking about black mambas and cobras and diamondbacks and gaboon vipers, and the list went on and on. And so, it was interesting to me that here they had these people working with venomous animals, and when they were asked the question, of all your venomous animals, or your venomous snakes, which ones are most aggressive, their answer was that they did not have any aggressive snakes. So I think that in itself kind of pushes the thought process that, well, if we can teach people, or if these people can tell us that they don't have any aggressive venomous snakes, well, then we should have a pretty easy time to tell people that aren't as aware as the most of us are that non-venomous snakes are even obviously less dangerous or less aggressive, which is, animals in the kingdom will react to feeling threatened in one of 2 ways. They'll either try to get away or try to protect themselves, and we call that fight or flight. And that goes for animals across the board in the animal kingdom, dogs, cats, horses. It goes for people, and so when I tell people that I've been working with snakes pretty much since I was 5 years old, and I've never met an aggressive snake, I can honestly say that. And people, a lot of times the adults especially, will roll their eyes thinking, well, who is this guy trying to kid? But it's interesting, by the end of the program, when we've had kids come up and, put snakes around their necks and get kissed by a 4.5-foot tegu and stuff like that, it's amazing how many people on a day-to-day basis, because, again, this is what I do for a living, are actually rethinking their prejudices against snakes in general, and I think we need to see more of that.
You're doing an outstanding job doing that. We appreciate you doing that for our community.
And it's a blast for me to do it. So it's one of those things that I think it's important for the herp community that we convey to people that are not as aware as we are about these animals. But it's a lot of fun to see these people go from literally shaking in their boots to putting a 9-foot albino Burmese python around their neck and end up talking baby talk to it. And this is what, like I said, this is what I see on a day-to-day basis. And it's kind of frustrating and disappointing that our government is taking this issue of the berms in the Everglades and totally, sensationalizing the whole thing. And even, the thought that these animals would be able to infiltrate into the rest of the United States is just as ridiculous. And we know it's ridiculous, but for some reason there are people that are concerned that that's going to happen, and they're not willing to listen to reason or logic. They're just really working off of their emotions. So if this is an emotional decision that most of these people are having, then what we need to do as a herp community is to change that emotion.
Well said. And again, we appreciate it. So is there anything you would like to add?
Just the fact that, I personally have appreciated all of the animals that I've or not produced, but actually purchased through the years. Because, if there's any success that I've had with any of my projects, it really started with somebody else producing the animal that I'm now producing from. So, I look at, the breeders, Dan and Colette Sutherland, and there's many, many more that are really focused on selective breeding. And lucky for me, they started the process, and in some cases, in most cases, I'm just trying to do what I can to keep that going.
Just carrying the torch for the pioneers.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. Thank you again, Brian, for being on Herp Parade. We'd love to have you back in the future.
Sure, Jason. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks again for taking time out and talking with us.
All right, bud. Take care.
All right. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Herp Parade. Don't forget to subscribe and comment on iTunes. And as always, we're streaming on live on herpherparade.buzzsprout.com and rossyreptiles.com. Herp Parade, out.